Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Climb On. We're going to get underway because we've got an action-packed night tonight. We're going to begin with our land acknowledgement, and we are proud and honored to say that we live, work, and play here on the traditional and unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Climb On exists solely to service the needs of climbers and the climbing community. That's all of you. And without you, we wouldn't exist or be here today. So thank you so much for your support and coming tonight. My name's Mike Pelthorpe. I'm one of the owners here at Climb On, and we're really excited for the evening we've got tonight. One of our big brand partners, Black Diamond, made this night possible. Without them, tonight would not be happening. So a big round of applause for BD tonight. And lastly, tonight's proceeds from the ticket sales go to CAS BC, the Climbers Access Society of BC. And we're big believers in access. We have a pretty good situation on the West Coast, but it can be tenuous and it can change quickly. So get involved, and there's so much in terms of crag maintenance, education, trail building, waste management, the list goes on. So get involved with access on the volunteer days. And yeah, that's tonight. All the proceeds go to CAS BC. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic to Jen Randall, storyteller and filmmaker, and our special guest tonight, Hazel Findlay.
Hello.
Hello. It works. We had a couple of questions for you guys before we start, just so we know what to talk about. Have we got some climbers here? I'm hoping that's a yes. Okay, great. Phew. That's relief. Any parents? Okay.
Hands. We want to see hands. Ooh,
right on. Well done. Any photographer, filmmaker, outdoor adventure media types? Either side of the camera. There's one. Okay, we'll just have the one question. That's what I want to talk about too. I bet there's more. Also, yeah, I'm interested in people who might be being filmed or photographed as well. I mean, we'll talk. Okay. No is the answer. Gotcha. All right. Thanks for coming. Hi, Hazel.
Hi, Jen.
We haven't really hung out for 6 years.
I thought it was
until the other day.
Was it not? It was 6 years. Yeah, I think 6 years. Yeah.
We said goodbye in Mongolia, and then didn't really speak until last week.
Pretty much.
But here we are.
A few Facebook messages, I think.
The odd message here and there. It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
You've been in Squamish for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, past few weeks.
What brought you there? What are you up to? Enjoying it?
Slightly long, boring story, but
go on.
Some worky stuff, but then also climbing, mostly. Yeah.
It looks
I'm here with my husband and my little baby who will turn 1 on Sunday, a week today.
Oh, definitely got parents in the audience. We'll skip to motherhood. Well, I think most people here know who you are. That's why. I think they're here for me, but they also know who you are.
I heard it was mostly for you, Jen.
But you have, everyone knows your reputation. You're a strong climber, a bold climber, very experienced climber. You've been in this area for a while. But for those of us who don't necessarily know the full story, how did you get started in climbing? What's your background? How did you get to this place?
So I got into climbing because my dad was a climber, and he was he was like a proper climber, really into sort of first ascents and really into trad ethics, like an adventurer, mountaineer. And so it just made sense that as his kids, we would be into it as well. And yeah, started off sort of just scrambling around, doing things like that, and then kind of took it a bit more seriously. But I also because my parents divorced, I was split between my mum and my dad, and my mum's not a climber at all. So I would climb indoors when I was with her, and then outdoors when I was with my dad. So I kind of got the experience of being a bit of a gym kid as well to some extent. And then I did the competitions, not super seriously, but did those, and then just climbing. I don't know.
Am I remembering right that your dad gave you a first ascent for your 11th birthday?
Yeah.
I feel like that has maybe set you on a certain trajectory.
Yeah, I like to joke it's because it's free, it doesn't cost any money, and he was quite cheapskate. But yeah, I mean, I've not done tons of first ascents. It's not like I'm a prolific first ascent person, but actually, I think Squamish is the place I've done the most first ascents, which says a lot about the area that you live in. I think that you're still putting up routes that are good. They're also good routes, like because I put up some bad routes in the UK, you know. But like I feel like the routes I put up in Squamish are like really good ones.
And you cut your teeth with climbing in the UK. Do you think that has really informed the kind of climber you've become? I think you have a video to sort of give those of us who haven't been to the UK climbing before an idea of the vibe.
Yeah,
what that's like.
I mean, bear in mind that this clip that we'll show now was made by Americans, so could have been slightly over dramatized, but it is a little like this.
In the UK, there's a very, very strong tradition of routes which are dangerous and bold.
Trad climbing or danger climbing.
Danger is an important part of the recipe.
The experience is heightened because the consequences are pretty savage.
There's a very strong ethic of traditional climbing in Britain.
You know, doing things in good style, like on gear from the ground.
And the gear placements are a bit shit.
The terrible gear and wiggling in small wires.
You have to be a bit of a wizard when you're placing gear.
Come on, for fuck's sake!
If there are bolts, they're miles apart.
Big runouts.
It is rather macho.
Putting up the raddest, most dangerous
If
routes.
you fall off, you're going to hurt yourself.
British trad climbing isn't for the faint-hearted.
You can get really scared and be in a very dangerous situation.
It's how you cope with feeling scared.
The British tradition is just to climb everything in any style. So the wet rock, the loose rock,
Ridiculously loose.
even though some of it's not technically rock,
450 feet of rubble.
but they just climb it anyway.
You don't forget those routes.
It's just a weird scene.
It's having an experience.
I will say though, it certainly toughens you up.
Part of the British character, I guess.
The elements of fear.
Oh my God.
Control of your fear.
You've got to be able to hold your head together.
If you're a long way above gear, you can't afford to blow it.
You need to have balls.
Who's booking their tickets?
Any takers? So also, I should say as well, like that's part of a bigger film, which kind of set. I don't know. Maybe you guys, some of you have seen it, but it's sort of set up to be like a bit toxically masculine on purpose. I should maybe say that.
Right. So that's climbing in Britain, and that's where Hazel learned to climb. So
Hyper masculine, all about who's the toughest, strongest, bravest, and an ethic of not placing bolts where there are runouts, crucially. So like here, I really like what you guys do personally, but like when you get to the runout, you like put some bolts in usually. Whereas we tend to not do that in the UK. So, and we also tend to have fewer cracks as well. So there's a lot of like face trad with big runouts in between pieces of protection.
yeah, I found it very hard to progress climbing in the UK because as it gets harder, it just got more dangerous.
Yeah.
I like Squamish better. Okay. Okay, well, fast forwarding a little bit. You're now a professional climber. You survived that. You moved on. Well, you're still there. I wanted to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit about climbing. And you've done a lot of impressive things. I'm going to embarrass you maybe here. You've climbed 9A Sport, which I wrote down is 14D, 514D. Does that add up about right? Really hard. E10 Trad, which is very dangerous, hard, scary trad. V11? I actually didn't know you'd bouldered that
I
hard.
did V11 the other day, actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Squamish V11. Okay.
I don't know if Squamish boulders are softer. I'm climbing well, but I've done a few hard boulders for me anyway.
See what online feedback we get from that comment.
What do you guys think? Are Squamish boulders soft or not?
No, they're well
But
hard.
I think they're really, really hard to V4 and then they get easier. Is that not right?
Okay, so we should all go try harder than before. I've kind of plateaued there personally. Okay, thank you for the tip. You free climbed El Cap 4 times?
Yes.
That's quite impressive also. And you have put up a bunch of first sets. As a sort of normal climber, I have lots of lofty goals. I'm sure you all do too, where you're like, one day I'm going to get on that thing or that thing. And I usually never do. And then I wonder why I haven't done any of these cool things. How do you choose your big goals and then commit to them? Like, how do you start? How do you keep going?
Yeah, so I think naturally I'm not very good at setting goals. I often like fall into goals. Like, you know, my friend was like, for example, the E9 that clip's a part of the film of. I only tried that route because my friend was trying it, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come try this thing with me?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, whatever." So maybe like being a bit of a yes person can help, you know, and just being curious, I think, is really like a good mindset for like orienting yourself towards things that you will follow through, because you've got that kind of more like personal motivation. But yeah, it wasn't until a bit later in my climbing where I started to reflect more on my mindset and things, and I was like, I'm not actually that good at setting goals, especially for a professional climber. So it's something that I've definitely worked on a lot. And I think just a few things that have really helped me are making sure that you are motivated for like the whole process of a goal. So a lot of people make the mistake of going, I really want to have done that thing rather than do that thing. And the doing of the thing includes like the whole process. So like for a hard climb, that also includes like maybe going to the gym and like doing workouts that are mundane and aren't like super exciting, like, or, you know, it also might mean trying the same move over and over and over again and not even making much progress for sometimes like weeks at a time. So you have to like consider the whole goal and the whole process leading up to the goal, and really be honest with yourself. Do I actually want to do that, or do I just want to have done the thing? And I've been in both places, and I can tell you that the wanting to just have done it is a really bad mindset for doing so anything that's hard. And this is like for life challenges as well. And then, yes, sticking at it. I'm like a believer in like grit and perseverance where it matters. But I think as a climbing community, sometimes we like over lionize grit and perseverance, because I also think it's a real skill of knowing when to quit too, and going, you know what, actually, this isn't doing me any good. Maybe I'm going to shelve it, come back to it later. But I think climbing is just a great teacher of learning how to do hard things. And I think that when it comes to lofty goals, incrementally have them loftier and loftier. Don't just like be like, you know, I'm a hobby climber and then I'm going to do this, you know. It's like, do something that's going to take you a session, and then maybe something that's going to take you a few sessions, then maybe a few weeks, then maybe a whole season, you know, and like build up from there. I think people can find it really hard when they like go for something that they're not like prepared for, basically, from a mental perspective more than anything.
I like that, thinking about, okay, this is my goal, thinking of the whole picture of what it might take to get there rather than like clipping the chains. Yeah, because that gets stressful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've picked our hard goal. Now we're in the middle of projecting, and it's been a while. It's taking a while. This is a hard one. How do you keep your site going, and how do you break down, you know, it could be easy to fall in the trap of like, well, progress is making a new huge link or one hanging, or progress would be sending the route. How do you keep your feeling of making progress going and keep your interest level high?
I think for me, like, so for example, this is a picture of Magic Line, and one of my like, so I like to talk about outcome goals and process goals. So the outcome goal was achieving the climb, but the process goals around that were being a better hard granite climber, getting more powerful because I needed to be more powerful for this climb. And then also was to stay positive with the whole process. So one of my like goals attached or like adjacent to the main goal was being positive throughout the whole process. And so in my mind, like there was more, I mean, I know this is one of your later questions, but there's like different ways to succeed and fail basically with this climb. And I think so to not get frustrated in that process is to come back to like, okay, well, what is this process actually teaching me? Maybe it's teaching me how to stay with something even when I'm not seeing gains all the time. So yeah, just like trying to remind yourself of like the gains that you're making and the learning and the growth, even if you don't actually send the thing or see progress as much as you'd like to, because that's inevitably going to happen, right? At times.
I feel like it's quite interesting you say knowing when to quit is important. Does that feel really hard to any of you guys? Like if I walk away, then I just fail. Like, how do you make those decisions of this isn't for me actually?
It's hard. It's really hard to make as a climber because I think a whole community is set up to like the person who just stuck at it forever, like they were the best person. Don't quit, like it's like never quit. It's like that's the worst thing you can do. Like even worse than like failing sometimes is like if we'll often say like, well, I know I gave it my best, but sometimes your best, like it can look different at different times. And I think that as climbers, we tend to do that like all the time. Like other athletes in different sports will have seasons where they're like, I'm going to hit skiing hard in winter, and then they chill a bit in summer. Whereas climbers are like, no, like all the time. So I think that like sometimes in your life you're like, yeah, this is time where I'm going to like really like persevere. And then other times in your life you're like, no, I need to actually be a bit more kind to myself. I need to like maybe rest, recuperate, like take things a bit easier. There's a bit of a balance there as well. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember what I asked you. I feel like I could talk about projecting for a long time. I'm going to move on a little bit.
Okay.
Fear.
Oh, hang on. Did we have something to show? Oh, yeah. No, maybe. Do you want to ask your question and then show it?
What is this about?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so as we mentioned, you're known as a bold climber. And I put bold in capital letters here.
In bold.
In bold. Actually, I didn't put it in bold. Italic. I feel like as well when you were first sort of making waves, it was all about that, like this small blonde girl. Gosh, she's bold. But you said, and you've written, you weren't just born bold. You weren't born without fear. How does fear come up for you, and how have you learned to like work with it? I think the trick is to work with it, not try and eliminate it. Like, yeah. What scares you? How do you get around it?
I actually need to play that. Oopsie.
Sounded scary.
Someone else play that? Should we play this now while I think about the answer?
Nice. What? Well done. Great work.
So that's, I think, one of the scariest. Well, it's weird. Well, anyway, I won't go into that, but I'll start again. I think this is a climb called Muy Caliente. It's in Pembroke in South Wales, and it's graded E9, and it was one of the most scared I've been just before a climb. Like I really had a lot of like a really high stress response basically, whereas I think I've been in like more objectively dangerous situations as a climber, like alpine climbing or on expeditions or whatever, but it's different when you kind of knowingly choosing to do something that you know is going to be really frightening. And like I practiced this route on a top rope first, but I wasn't 100% sure that I wouldn't fall. But the run out, basically, if you fall at the end of the run out, you'll probably hit the ground. But yeah, the question was about kind of fear and like, yeah, I guess people do think of me as a bold climber, and I think that I have been able to do some scary things like this, but I do still get scared, just like sport climbing sometimes too as well. And I really don't think of myself as like, you know, like Alex Honnold is like an unusually good person at like not having a stress response, whereas I feel like I'm just like a normal person. But I've just climbed a lot, and I've, you know, like gradually over the years got better at this sort of thing. And then, as some of you might know, I'm also a mental training coach, and I've thought a lot about fear management and how we kind of unlearn fear, essentially. And it's one of those things where, like, if I'd known back when I was younger what I now know, I would have found, like, moving through climbing a lot easier. So like when I was in my late teens, for example, I almost gave up climbing because I just found it too scary, too stressful. Like even just like climbing in the gym, even on top rope, I just like really struggled with it. And then like I've gone through ups and downs with it. And so, yeah, I think that in climbing, we can make quite a few mistakes when it comes to fear. I think the first one is that a lot of climbers think that to be a climber is sort of to be fearless. And that if you get scared, you're kind of like not being like how a climber should be. And I know that maybe more women feel like that as well. And I think that's because men haven't voiced fears as much historically or not as open about it. So then there's a like can be a gender thing in there too. But yeah, the first thing is that like climbing I think would be pretty boring if like we never got scared. So that's one thing is to be like, okay, this is just a part of the climbing experience, and that actually it might be the thing that you find really interesting about climbing actually, and that it's learning to overcome those fears or to reduce them. Or to work with them, whatever language you want to use, befriend them. That's like part of the climbing experience. So like for me, I've always been interested in that side of climbing. And I think that's what's drawn me to do climbs like that. There's just been this real kind of curiosity to be like, can I keep my shit together on that run out? Like I've always like thought that in my head, you know, and it's just part of climbing I've personally found really interesting, and that's not for everyone. A lot of my friends who are climbers don't find that side of climbing as interesting as I do. But yeah, it's definitely something that I've like really had to train, think about a lot, develop in my climbing, be really intentional around. I think that's something that a lot of climbers don't do, is they're not intentional about the mental side of climbing. And yeah, certainly not something that I was just born with. I was like very scared as a young person.
I always find it really reassuring to hear very good climbers say they especially get scared on a top rope. It makes me feel better. Like
top roping can be scary,
right? Okay. So you learned to work through it. And I remember years ago, I did one of your early webinars with your mental coaching, and you talked about the panic zone. Mm-hmm. And I think for me early on as a climber, if I ever did anything hard for me, it meant like, well, I have to go into my panic zone in order to survive this and get through it. And it's been really cool. You kind of talk about not going into that, but going into your stretch zone. Can you talk a little bit about facts?
Yeah, so when it comes to fear, I think there's like two main mistakes that climbers make. One is that they try to avoid the things that they find scary in climbing completely, or they get the challenge level too high and have like a really high stress response while climbing. So the easiest way to think about this, I think, is to make it like analogous to physical training. So we know when we train physically that if we want to get stronger, we have to get the stimulus level right. And that's like what a good training plan essentially does, right? It's like we know that if we want stronger biceps, we need to work the bicep. So we need to do challenge the muscle in some way, but we don't want to like over stimulate it, because that's when we'll get an injury. And the mind, like on a basic level, works in the same way. It's like if we avoid the things that stress us, we just get more fragile with respect to that thing. But if we push ourselves too much and we go into the panic zone, then we can give ourselves like a kind of an injury of the mind. And so like on a extreme level, that would be like a trauma experience. And that's not uncommon in climbing. Even like watching someone have an accident, or even taking a fall where maybe you didn't even hurt yourself, but it really shocked you, like it really surprised you. That is kind of like a little micro trauma, a sort of injury to the mind. And so like we really want to work in this sweet spot where we might feel a little bit uncomfortable when we're climbing, but we are able to manage it and we're still able to climb well. So like when, for example, a lot of people come to our coaching because they have a fear of falling, and the classic mistake with falling, to use that sort of that same thing that I've just talked about, is people will avoid falling altogether. So like not getting more comfortable with falling to doing that, or they like force themselves to take falls that they're not ready for. And even like in a full practice gym environment, I see people do this all the time. They fall where their body language is very stressed, they're very rigid in the air. And then you also don't land well, which means you're also more likely to hurt yourself physically. So yeah, it's really getting that sweet spot right. And to get that sweet spot right, you need a certain amount of self-awareness. And so one of the things that we help the students with who come to us is actually learning how to tune into your stress response. It's something that we're not taught really. And I think we probably should be, not just for climbing, but for life as well. You know, there's a lot of people walking around with chronic stress because they're not noticing the stressors build up in their nervous system. So it's hard. It's not like with physical training where you're like, okay, here's the steps and reps based on your max strength. We don't have the way of calculating it like that. But through kind of like learning to tune into your breath or like just how you feel in your body, you can start to get that challenge level right, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so we've picked our goal. We've been projecting for a while. We're dealing with our fear. Now we've got So Zen. Actually, what's our next picture? Yeah. You told me this was not you trying hard. And I was like, I think for most people, we'd be trying quite hard if we were in this position.
No, I meant I didn't have a try hard face.
It's easy for Hazel, whatever. We're feeling so zen and we've done our mind work that now it's actually quite hard to tap into turning on the grr when we want to. Does anyone else have that problem? I'm just like getting some coaching here from Hazel.
These are just like all your prep questions.
I have days where I'm just like, I still really want to try hard today. Is that something you can just turn on like a tap, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It's actually quite a complex question, I think that. So it depends how long you've got. If someone came to me and was like, I really struggle to try hard, that would be like an hour-long coaching conversation to try and figure out their personal reasons why they can't try hard.
Okay, ask away.
How long have you got? So I think one of the main reasons why someone might not want to try hard is because they're scared to fall, actually. Because sometimes if you got them on a top rope, they would try hard, but it's on lead they're saying take, they're giving up before their physical limit because actually they're not comfortable with the falls. So that's where like my brain first goes when someone says that they can't try hard. The other thing I would say is that like learning to try hard is a skill. It took me time to develop that as a skill, and now I think it's like my superpower. I like pretty much always try hard, and like there's levels of try hard as well, and like sometimes I try really hard to the point where I'm like, oh, like my husband's always laughing at me because he's like, oh yeah, you got yourself in a hole again, didn't you? Like one effort on a climb will be like, oh, that's like a week of DOMs basically.
That's trying really hard.
Yeah, I take it a bit farther. So yeah, it's a skill that you can practice, and I think that like practicing it in places where you feel more comfortable, like in the climbing gym, like doing laps, for example, and you like have your buddies be like, no, come on, one more move, getting people to shout at you, that helps. But yeah, no, developing it as a skill. And then I think actually the other thing that gets in the way of try hard is a fear of failure as well. So I think that some people give up because they're like, well, if I'm this pumped at the second clip, how on earth can I get to the top? I may as well just give up now. And I'm not saying that that's always the bad thing to do, because sometimes you want to just conserve energy and, you know, be a bit more strategic. But if you're always doing that, you never get a chance to practice try hard. So like sometimes I'll just like keep going, even though I know that there's probably no chance of me getting to the top, like especially like on an on-site on a sport route, for example. But then you never know, it's like a jug could be just around the corner. So I've like on-sited some of my hardest routes where like I really so basically I've had to let go of like this attachment to the send, if you know what I mean, in order to continue to try hard. Whereas I see other climbers go, oh well, there was no point, so I just kind of said take.
It's kind of a control thing, maybe. Like, I can control this situation by saying take, or I'm not going to fight. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Hope that makes sense to everyone else as well. Failure and success. We sort of touched on this earlier, but we'll go in a little more. On paper in climbing, I think sending is success. But we've both been talking a little bit, and you've mentioned that success can mean a lot of different things in climbing, and so can failure. And there are lots of ways to be a good climber. You said that the other day when we were talking, and I liked that. Can we expand on all of those quite broad topics?
Yeah. So do you have a clip of another film to show where so this is of a climb called Concepcion, which is in a canyon near Moab. And I succeeded in this climb, but in other ways I failed because I failed to have a good mindset throughout the process. Let's say that.
Oh. Or maybe that was success. I don't know.
No, because I didn't keep my head screwed on.
Yeah, what was going on in there for you? That was a lot of, you sounded stressed.
Yeah. So that was like in a time in my life where like other personal things weren't going well. And so what I did, which I think a lot of climbers would probably relate to, is when the rest of their life is not going well, they're like, I'm going to make myself feel better with climbing.
None of us have ever done that in this room.
I'm going to pick this climbing goal. And then basically you like kind of, I attached some of my self-worth basically to the outcome of this climbing goal. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm only worthy if I climb this thing. It's like, I haven't climbed this thing, and therefore it's chipping away at my self-confidence and my self-worth, because my confidence is being like compromised in other areas of my life. So yeah, I succeeded in the climb eventually and I had to like go through this process of like letting go through failure and like doing all these things that I knew how to do as a coach, but like can be still hard to apply in the real world, like personally. But I did manage to do it, and I managed to climb well in the end and do it, but like it didn't have to be such a drawn out process. But that was a really sort of like a helpful personal experience in the end, because it helped me see that like with projecting, there are different ways to succeed and fail. And the next year, or actually that same year, is when I set the goal of climbing Magic Line. And I knew, because I was just off the back of that, because also sometimes you have to learn these lessons more than once. It's like, it's not that I had never done that in a project before, right? It's that you have to keep revisiting things sometimes. We're slow learners sometimes as humans. And I was like, okay, off the back of that, I want Magic Line to be different. So I like really worked on my mindset and my motivation from the first like thinking of the goal. I think that's something that climbers don't do as well. Is like they pick the goal because they're like, oh, that's a cool climb, or like I want to have done that thing, and then fear of failure comes up at some point along the process, and that's when they start doing some mental training and mental work and reflecting on their mindset and things. Whereas ideally, really, it should happen right at the start. You should start asking yourself questions about like, why do I want to do this climb? What does it mean to me? How much do I want to put into it? You know, is this a send at all costs type of thing? Or is this like, maybe I'll want to keep my relationship and like my happiness in there a bit, you know? You know, it's like kind of like working those things out initially. So like, it was quite timely in a way, because it meant that I was like really well set up to have like a good experience with Magic Climb, which was a harder, more involved climb, really.
Cool.
But more about the success and failure. I think, a few mistakes thinking that in real simplistic terms that sending is success. It doesn't have to be as you've seen. But I think the other mistakes that we make is like importing other people's ideas of success and failure. And like really, we get to decide what's success and failure for us, especially in climbing, because climbing's a hobby. And I think the mistake that we often make is like, oh, other people in my community seem to think that like going through the grades is success. Whereas like, is that success to me? I don't know. You know, maybe it is, maybe it's not. And I think where we go wrong is like basically just copying and pasting other people's ideas around what success and failure is. It's much better when it's like personal, basically.
I loved the stuff that I think it was again from the same webinar, you talked about owning your own climbing experience. And that sounds like part of that. Or, you know, if something's not going your way and you feel really in a bad mood about it, you can think like, okay, well, how am I going to turn this day around for myself and be a good climbing partner? And yeah, that was very helpful for me.
Yeah.
So thanks. Okay. Life and balance is my next category. Does anyone have a life, and is it balanced? No. So recently, I mean, you've been a pro climber for how long? 100 years?
So old.
No.
I'm
wow.
so broken.
But lately, your life has grown in a lot of ways. You're still an athlete. You're a wife.
Just about. We got married in Vegas. Does that even count?
You're a mother.
I am a mother, yeah.
Definitely that. And you run a business, coaching business that we've been talking about. I think balance is always a really tough thing. It's really healthy to have many important things in your life, I think. Mm-hmm. Hard to balance them and give them the energy or the time that you want to. How do you strike this balance? And if so, how? Or when it works, how does it work?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm that much better than anyone else, to be honest. I think we're all kind of just muddling along. I think modern world, like if you're someone who, you know, wants to do well in your hobby, you want to do well in your job, you know, you've got interests and you're someone who wants to push yourself, you're probably always going to be struggling and muddling along and feeling stressed and overwhelmed at times, and then like calm and that chill other times. I think that sort of just, especially if you're a parent. I think I highly recommend reading Oliver Burkeman. Is any Oliver Burkeman fans in here? Not a single person knows Oliver Burkeman. Not one. Oh my God, that's crazy.
I've never heard of him. Who's Oliver?
Read his book. He's got a few books now, but like 4,000 Weeks is his famous book. And basically it's like, all this like sort of productivity hacks and gurus and like save your time doing this and do this and da-da-da-da. He was like, just get rid of all of that. Like, you've just got to lean into the chaos of it, basically. Like, when you stop fighting, when you realize that like your inbox will never be empty, your plate will never be empty, you'll always have a lot going on. And then just, leaning into that basically, almost like basically from an acceptance perspective. So instead of like fighting it and being like, I'll be chill when this happens, or like things will be more relaxed in some, like just deferring everything to some future state, he's just like, you've got to lean into the chaos and be okay with it, basically. And that's kind of my philosophy.
I like that.
You will not have life balance. Accept it now. You will be better off.
That's kind of nice, because then you're not feeling like you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, everyone feels like they're doing it wrong because they're not doing some like productivity thing, or their calendar's not synced with like the whole family, or like, you know what I mean? Like, whereas I think it's just better to be like, everyone's just trying their best, and it's gonna feel hard, and it will never not feel hard.
It's reassuring, I guess. Thanks. Okay.
Well, the thing is, as soon as it stops feeling hard, if you're anyone like me, you just create more goals for yourself.
When it starts feeling hard, you're doing it wrong. It should feel hard.
I'm just like, as soon as my calendar looks a little bit empty, I'm like, and my husband laughs at me so much. I was like, should we make a new course? Like, should I put on some webinars, or like, I just fill it. We just fill it. So
create the chaos.
Yeah.
Own the experience. I get it. Who's a parent here? Great. My next category is motherhood. Do we have any more pictures? Oh yeah, there was a baby in that picture.
That's me pregnant.
Aww. Okay. And maybe there's people here thinking of becoming parents or not. It's a big change for anyone, become a mother, become a father. And I know lots of women, I'm sure, and men, there's probably lots here who are very committed to a sport or a career or any number of things. And the idea of potentially like giving up your body and your time and your energy and your money and your whole life. Can you guess if I have children or not? Could be scary. Just giving up. When I wrote that, it didn't sound as quite as dramatic. So, how did you make the decision to go
What have I done?
Are you sure?
We can take it back, right?
I think they're permanent.
What?
No, how did you, if you don't mind sharing, how did you come to that terrifying decision? And what was it like once you kind of made it? I guess you have to give up a lot of control, like your body takes over and it does other stuff. And as an athlete, that must be interesting.
Yeah.
What's that all like?
Ooh, what was that all like? So I've always wanted to be a mum. So it never was really like a big decision for me. Like, I always just knew that's what I wanted. Like, since I was a kid, that's what I wanted, basically. Convincing my husband, though, especially because he's younger than me. But I have put it off. So I'm 36. I haven't put it off like, as late as some people do. But it was a worry for me that I, as an athlete, my body, but all the things you mentioned were worries for sure. But for me, I just felt like it was the right decision for me. But I did choose to do it a bit later than I probably would have done if I hadn't been a professional climber. What else? Losing bodily.
Yeah, when you made that decision and you became pregnant, was there an element of sort of, well, not Jesus take the wheel, but nature take the wheel?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the sort of like maybe the more interesting things I can say is like when I became pregnant, like I thought that I would be like making this baby, but really the feeling is like the baby's like you're not changing for the baby, like the baby's like changing you, kind of thing.
See, that
like,
seems really scary.
The control is like the other way around. Like basically you're just like the host of this far stronger thing that's happening in your body, basically. Being pregnant does kind of suck. Like it does. I think it's worth it, but it's obviously a personal thing. But I had a lot of fears because I've, as you know, Jen, had a lot of injuries in my career, and I've always struggled with this like belief that maybe my body isn't super resilient compared to other climbers I know. Like some of my friends like have barely had injuries, whereas I feel like I'm in and out of injuries all the time. And part of that's because of hypermobility. And so I thought like add pregnancy in the mix where everyone's like, oh, you're going to be so bendy because of there's like a hormone called relaxin that makes you more mobile when you're pregnant. So I was like, I had fears around things like that, but I don't know. I think because I was like sure about the decision, you just have to accept it. And luckily, when I was younger, I was worse at looking after my body. I think because I was a bit more of a dirtbag climber, kind of just going from climbing trip to climbing trip. Whereas now I'm just like a bit more of an adult. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to seek out like a postpartum and pregnancy coach, and I'm going to have like them be the expert. And like, I'm much more willing to like outsource things now. I'm more of an adult. And that was definitely a good decision because I just did what they told me and it worked basically.
Yeah. That does bring me to my bouncing back question. It seems like from other athletes I've spoken to and worked with, the idea of bouncing back after pregnancy in particular is quite a huge, in some ways, it can be a big stressor. Like Beth Rodden talked about, she had her son and then felt like she needed to very quickly kind of apologize for the inconvenience and get back to business as normal as quickly as she could. What was bouncing back, the big bouncing back like for you? And was there pressure, or do you think maybe the climbing world, maybe the world generally has like moved on from that a little bit? And personally, I mean, I've been through injuries and illness and things, and I always feel like I've told myself I want to get back, but I don't really think you do go back. You're always evolving and you're a little different and changed.
Yeah, I mean, the bouncing back. I think the conversation has changed quite a lot since. I think Beth's son's probably like 10 or something now. And so I think we're lucky that the conversation's changed. But in some ways, I almost think that it can skew too much the other way sometimes too, where people are like, you don't need to bounce back. You just need to rest and chill and be with your baby. And it's like, I don't really want to do that either. Like, I want to go climbing again. That's what I love. Like, I don't want to just stay at home for like a year to make sure I'm really properly recovered. No, I want to like rehab my body. I want to get my body strong again. And I want to do that at the pace of my body. But, yeah, so it's weird. It's almost like there's these two narratives now, and I think both can be unhelpful. One is like, rush it, and the other one is like, don't really do it. Just
don't even try.
Well, it's more like it's like very skewed towards rest, whereas I think recovery like honestly, I sat on the couch for like 3 weeks after I had a C-section as well, so it's like a bit of a slower recovery. So I did my fair share of just chilling for sure, but I was doing like breathing exercises from like 3 days postpartum. So it's like that kind of intentional recovery. Like you wouldn't have like a knee operation and just sit on the couch. you would do your rehab, wouldn't you? Even if it was just going like this, like a few days, like you'd have a whole protocol. But we're so behind with women's health. Like, I don't know how it is in Canada. It's probably better than the UK. But in the UK, I didn't even get a checkup. They literally were just like, off you go with your whole abdominals cut open. And like, yeah, they didn't even check, basically. The stitches just dissolve. They just tell you don't lift anything heavier than your baby, even though your baby can range from like almost nothing to, you know, Aliette was like 4 kilograms.
Right.
Which actually, when you like are lifting like that, you know, is a stress on the core. So yeah. But yeah, back to your bouncing back thing. What else was part of that question?
Yeah, so I guess it sounds a bit like it was kind of about owning your experience.
Yeah, just being smart about it, you know, and this is for anyone who's planning on being pregnant, but also like if you have an injury or something, just like, yeah, owning the experience, being smart about it, seeking expert help and guidance, because we're not, well, maybe there are some doctors here, but, you know, most of us aren't experts at those things. And yeah, that's for me what it's about. But yeah, there are pressures on women to get back very quickly, and I don't think they're very helpful. And I think that also that like we're seeing a lot of like mums crushing in climbing now, but that's still very new, and it's still very hard, I think, to maintain a career as a professional climber, as a mum, and that's why a lot of those women waited quite late to have kids.
Has motherhood given you a new perspective, taught you new things? Like, do you approach, I don't know, does the world feel different? This is a big, broad question.
Yeah, I was really struggling with this one, actually. I mean, it's made me more of a feminist, I can say that much, because it's just so hard on mums. And that society is really not set up for mums to flourish. I deeply believe that. And I think that we're going to see like population problems basically because of that. But yeah, it's getting a bit political and stuff. But personally, I don't know, it's really hard like to say it in words. Like I'm sure it has changed my perspective, but it's more just like, I don't know, I guess my world's a bit bigger now, you know, like, yeah, I don't know.
That makes sense.
It's definitely more stressful.
Embrace the chaos.
But there's better feels. I think that like, yeah, I don't know if I could describe that as like just better feels. Like getting a dog.
Oh, it's the same.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're not a parent but you have a dog, you know what I mean.
Then we already know. Okay. Cancel those questions. Okay. Thanks. That was insightful. I meant that. That sounded sarcastic. I meant that. Thank you.
It's really hard to be sincere as a Brit, isn't it? Have you noticed that coming to Canada?
Yeah, a lot of times there's probably a lot of Brits here. Are there any British people here who moved here? Do you crack jokes, like sarcastic jokes, and people are like, that's rude? Yeah.
There's so many Brits though, aren't there? Like you just go into Save-On. Like I remember I was in Save-On the other day and I was like, oh, that's expensive. And some Londoner was like, oh yeah, that was right, Spenny that or something like that.
It's a good accent. There's a British shelf.
Yeah, a Marmite. I want to be a Marmite importer in this. I would make so much money because those Marmite that was like that much and it was like $20 or something. Right. Whereas like, you know, you can get that much back home for like £3.
Could stay.
Yeah.
I buy the odd Whisper. Does anyone else buy a little? You're nodding in the back. Oh, right. But once in a while, you're just like, I'll just get myself a Whisper. It's a chocolate bar.
But they don't do that horrible thing because they have Cadbury's here, but it's not Cadbury's, is it? It's actually Hershey's.
What?
Yeah, the Cadbury's here is actually Hershey's. That's why it tastes so bad. Have you not noticed
You're
that?
nodding again. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's made in like a factory somewhere in like Alabama or something.
Oh. Well, every day's a school day. Yeah. Okay, there was one media maker. Are there actually more? They just didn't. I never put my hand up if that's asked because I don't want to be the person who's
but that's because you're British.
Yeah. I bet there's more.
Really, are you?
Well, if no one's interested, at least we're about to have a good time, you and me. Media. Well, I mean, most people are on social media, so you might get my first question. Part of being a pro athlete, I think, these days is you've got to have some kind of media online presence. You are a person who, I said strikes me, but I think I know you have like a strong sense of self and you don't take much crap. Does that strike you about Hazel?
In certain situations, not in others.
He's nodding again. I like this. Okay, 10 minutes. Right, we've got, okay. How do you, it was just about to get good for us. We've sat here this whole time. How do you navigate social media and keep a sense of like authenticity while doing so?
I just pretend that no one reads my stuff.
Oh.
No, I don't.
Maybe no one does.
Yeah. The likes, they're just bots. Yeah, they're just random bots. Yeah.
Right.
No. So basically at some point in my professional climbing career, I realized that I had to be visible. Mm-hmm. Even as a coach with my coaching business, I was going to have to be visible, and that would need to include social media. And I'm actually quite introverted. I sort of like learned to be more extroverted, but I'm naturally an introvert. And like I remember, like I was terrified the first time I did my first Facebook post, for example. So it's not something that's natural to me. But I was like, if I want to be a professional climber, if I want this to be my lifestyle, this is necessarily a part of it. So basically, I just decided that to make it something that I wouldn't begrudge. And it's not, sometimes it does feel like a hardship or a burden or whatever. But there's always parts of anyone's job that are going to be hard, aren't they? And I think as far as jobs go, I'm pretty lucky. So, it's just about, I had to sort of take ownership again and be like, I want to make this positive. So essentially with my social media, I've tried to not just add to the noise and like try to share stuff that feels somewhat meaningful to me, at least. It's not going to be for everyone, but that's okay too. And yeah, basically just try to make it a positive thing. And I know that sounds really simple, but there's plenty of professional climbers who literally just force themselves to do it. And it's not something that's positive for them at all because they've not made that mindset shift. So yeah.
Own it. Again,
own it.
This should be Hazel Findlay owning it. That can be our next movie about you. Speaking of movies, you've been in a lot of climbing films. Real Rocks, more recently a Nat Geo Disney production, which was a biggie. Anyone see it yet? It's quite good, quite exciting. You're a media maker. You didn't put your hand up.
No, I'm not. I'm just holding.
Oh. Okay.
Well, you are now.
Okay. Well, again, I am, so I'm going to ask this question. As a filmmaker, I feel like largely I've created, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I've created quite positive experiences for people I'm working with on films. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've failed to do that. As an athlete in these films, what's made some shoots positive experiences for you and others less so? And what nuggets of wisdom can you give to athletes who might be in a film sometime or someone making one to make it a positive experience?
Yeah. What should I say about that? I think from the athlete side and also for people just watching climbing films, I think a lot of people come to me and be like, I loved your film. I'm like, it's not my film. I was in it, but it's not my film. And I think that a lot of people think that you made it or you were at least part of making it or had any say. So a lot of the films I made, I literally, the first time I saw them was when they get, what's it called, premiere. So I think that's one thing that's helpful to know is that, so in the end, a lot of the time, the climbing films that are about me are often like someone else's story about me. And so they can feel maybe like at first I had a bit of a hard time with it. It didn't feel super genuine or authentic. But then again, I just learned that, you know, that's part of my job, and that it, you know, how people portray me is always going to be slightly different to how I would portray myself. But if you are a filmmaker or you're thinking of becoming a filmmaker, I think it is nice to create films that do align well with the subjects, and I think that you're really good at doing that. And then I think you know, just working with the athlete, basically, having them have some kind of creative influence on the final piece can be helpful. And then I think also, like, just making sure that you're not putting any pressure on the athletes is a big one. And I wouldn't say that anyone I've worked with has overtly done that, but there are very subtle ways that you can put pressure on people, as you probably all know, like even just in climbing partnerships, you can feel that sometimes. So just being like really self-aware around when you're doing that, essentially. Yeah.
I think I'll answer this also for you. I think listening when athletes say they don't want to do something, just be like, cool, we won't.
Yeah, I have actually had filmmakers who like have really tried to persuade me and another athlete to do something that we really didn't want to do. And we were just like, nah, it's not how it works. It's not like running to the shops and getting coffee. Like, this is like kind of our lives, you know, like we can't just do it.
Yeah, good for you for speaking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that pressure can be real. This leads quite well into my last question for however much time we have left. As you get into, like, you've been on freaking Disney Plus recently. That's kind of as big as a platform as it can get. And I feel like that's huge and sort of goes toward carving a path forward for women being represented in sports, which is amazing. But in those bigger sets and crews and environments and, you know, bigger sponsors and things, it's a big machine. So how do you hold your ground, make sure you have a voice, or maybe that doesn't always happen successfully, and kind of make sure you have what you need to perform well in those like big situations?
Yeah, I mean, we were going to show this, but I think we can just skip to this final slide. So I don't know if any of you guys saw. So for those of you who don't know, in 2022, the Nat Geo part of Disney funded a trip that me, Alex Honnold, Mikey Schaefer, Aldo Kane, and then a bunch of climate scientists went on to Greenland. And so there was like a 3-part series that was made that got put on Disney. And the idea was like we put up 2 new routes in Greenland, and we also did a bunch of climate science, because basically we got to some remote areas and put in like sensors and collected deposits and things like that. So it was like a bit of a passion project for Alex, because as probably you know, he's really into like climate science and obviously climbing. But it was really interesting for me because I've mostly worked within like our nice, cozy, friendly climbing community. And I was like, I've been involved in Nat Geo a bit before. And many years ago, I was sponsored by the North Face, but I in part moved to Black Diamond because I wanted to be part of a more core climbing brand, rather than like in North Face, you really feel like you're part of this giant machine. And yeah, it was just very interesting because I feel like it made me realize that like a lot of the parity we've seen between men and women in climbing is actually quite unique to our sport, which is really nice for us, you know, that we do really celebrate women's climbing, and women's climbing is very good. It's not like there's this huge gap between men and women. But like, yeah, it was very different being in the adventure space, which is kind of more like what the TV show was geared to, like a more general audience. And yeah, people didn't really want to hear from me. But yeah, it was really interesting. Just, I was like treated very differently, basically. And then as you see, like all of like the media after, so me and Alex like climbed this 1,400 meter big wall in Greenland, first ascents, we swung pitches, And all of the media was just like, Alex Honnold does this thing, which is like, you'd never hear that in climbing. Like in climbing, you would always have like the team of first ascensionists. And your question, Jen, is like, how do you still have a voice? I don't know, honestly. Like, I complained to National Geographic and I was on a call with the guy and he was very apologetic, but he basically was just like, he, didn't really have anything to say other than that they were sorry, but like they could have come and changed the social posts and articles, and they didn't. And it's very ironic, because if you go on their website, it's like, we're devoted to women in adventure and celebrating this and celebrating that and like diversity and inclusion and blah, blah, blah. But it's like they literally got handed this like a case of a woman and a man doing something, and where like the woman was like an equal on that team. Obviously not saying I'm as good as Alex, but we were an equal. I was just as an important part of the team, and they basically didn't want to celebrate that. So it's difficult for sure. And I think that it's really hard because the general population, I think when they think of adventurer or they think of climber, they still think man. I don't know if you feel that like in like when you speak to like a random like Uber driver or something and you say they're a climber, they're like, huh? Whereas like when my boyfriend says he's a climber, they're like, huh? And that's men and women, by the way. This is not like, women have those biases too. So yeah, it's just, it's going to be a slow process basically, but
I'm
we're getting there.
I'm sure that meeting you had to voice this problem will have some effect, even if it's
maybe
small. Might not change the world yet.
I don't know.
But. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up our conversation, but we have time for some questions, and that will get answers, a question and answer. And then I think there's some prizes.
Yeah.
If you can answer more questions, if you can answer questions, you get prizes. Does anyone have a question for me? Or Hazel?
Ask Jen a question. Make her feel a bit more
There's a
loved.
question back there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of power screaming. But yeah, sometimes I do it just when I'm scared too. But it's not like because I'm scared. It's I think usually it's like it's to focus, and it's like a release in tension as well. So it's like sometimes when you're a bit too stressed or you're trying too hard through a move, you can hold your breath, and so shouting or like power screaming, I think allows it to escape easier, basically. But I also think there's something about hearing a sound that like anchors your attention. So like sometimes I'll even if it's not a power scream, but say I want to just like focus before a crux move or something, I'll breathe out and I'll like listen to the sound of my breath, and that will help basically bring me into the present moment, essentially.
There's one.
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, it's really hard. It's really difficult. I think, yeah, a few things like with injuries, again, like outsourcing, like really looking to find help from people who know, because I think when you have a good diagnosis and you know what to do about it, it's so much easier to be positive about it. And like the hardest times in my climbing were when I had like a shoulder problem and no one could give me a proper diagnosis for it. And so I would just be doing these exercises, but they wouldn't be getting me anywhere. So I think that can really help. And then for when you're just like, oh, my body's different and it's going to take time for me to get stronger or to heal, I think just leaning into like being grateful for what you do have. So like even if you get to go climbing at all, like that's better than not being able to climb. So that's always really helpful for me. So like even if like for example, when I was pregnant, obviously I couldn't climb in the same way at all. But I was just really grateful that my body allowed me to climb on some level, because I know that like for other people, they couldn't climb at all in the pregnancy for whatever reason. So yeah, just trying to be grateful. And then, working hard to, get a resilient body basically, because like the thing that I've really had to realize is that like for me to not get injured just takes pretty much constant hard work. Like so much of the training I do as a climber is really just injury prevention at this point. Yeah. So yeah, for those who did everyone hear that, by the way? Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen the series, the final wall that we climbed, Ingmacourtalak, was really scary and chossy, unfortunately. And Mikey Schaefer, who was like the third, there was like me, Alex, and Mikey Schaefer, and he basically decided that he didn't want to climb. And it was really interesting because I really respected his decision, because I was like, if you're going to be on that wall, you need to want to be there for yourself. And sometimes as climbers, like the braver thing to do often is to actually go against what socially, like the social pressure is. And like the social pressure in this instance was obviously for him to climb. And especially because like millions of dollars had been spent on this huge production. And then if I said, I didn't want to climb, then like Alex would have had no one to climb with. And he was like threatening to solo it, which would have been horrendous. But also they wouldn't have let him. He wasn't actually allowed to, and they wouldn't have filmed it. So from a business perspective, that wasn't a solution either. So there was a lot of pressure on me to join him on this climb. But honestly, for me, it wasn't that hard a decision because I just really wanted to try to climb it. I was really curious about whether I could climb it. Obviously, there was that pressure, so I had to like take a step back and be like, am I sure that I actually want to climb this thing for me? And I'm not just feeling that pressure. But I asked myself that question, and I felt like I really knew the answer. So yeah, it was reflection, but yeah, I definitely, there was obviously a mix of motivations, but I wanted to do it enough for me, basically. But yeah, it was funny because Alex was like, just didn't understand Mikey's decision at all. Whereas like, I perfectly understood it and like respected him for a bit. And Alex was just like, wait, you don't want to climb the wall? I don't understand.
What?
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that because that's something I wanted to ask, but didn't have time. Any other questions?
So my motivation's to keep pushing my climbing and trying hard. Yeah. Including through the fear sessions again. Yeah. For me, I think one of like a big. So okay, here are the few big motivations. One is like just simple curiosity, and I think that like is one of my. Like, we each have like kind of our personal values, and it's like a strong personal value for me, curiosity. And when I see a wall like that, I can't help but think, what's it going to be like up there? And I think that that's in every climber, we have that to some extent, or otherwise we wouldn't climb. There was probably something, even if you've only ever been indoor climbing, there was something that made you go, I wonder what climbing up those plastic colored grips feels like, so I think that honestly just that a lot of the time is a big driver for me. And then the other one is around like the experience itself. So there's just a certain kind of experience that you have when you're climbing something that's difficult for you, that's hard to find, I think, in other areas of your life. Like, it could be a flow state experience where you're like really, really focused, but it could also just be like, wow, this is so out there. Like, like that wall in Greenland, it was like the views were so epic from it. And I know that we maybe could have got those views slightly easier way, but like it wouldn't have been quite the same experience, So it's like just having an experience that and the experiences that are unique to climbing are a real motivator for me. And especially those kind of like internal experiences like flow or like awe or wonder or presence, that are kind of like more memorable and just wilder, I suppose, than like more mundane life experiences. And then the other things are just like personal growth and challenge. Like I'm just quite like challenge is also personal value for me. So like I quite enjoy just being challenged. And so this was an obvious challenge for me. And it's like the question is like, was I up for that challenge, basically? Yeah.
Any others?
Just end with some easy questions to like get us home. Yeah.
Where are those prizes?
So to your first question, what can men do? I actually think, I mean, there's different things you can do, but I think that the suggestion that I'll bring now is actually just talking about how you feel more. Because I think that women actually are a bit better at that, but they come into this male space where, like, for years, like climbers, like I felt like climbers I didn't hear people say, I'm scared. Or I didn't hear people say, even though they clearly were, like shaking, and like saying take and like, and it's like, it's because I'm pumped. It's like, no, you were clearly scared. Like everyone can see that. So just like, I think being like, there's different forms of bravery, right? And I think that the masculine types of bravery are more dominant, like sort of like just doing the risky, scary thing and pushing through and da-da-da. But like, actually, I think women can be more courageous. And these are like obviously huge stereotypes here, but like, like just averages, like can be more courageous in how they speak about how they feel. So like one difference I see with the people who come to our coaching is I think that both men and women can be scared in climbing. But women can often get stuck in being scared because they voice it and talk about it, and it's more socially acceptable for them to be scared. So they're more likely to be like, oh, I'm just a scared climber. Whereas men, they can be scared, but it's not as socially acceptable for them to be scared. So then they push through. But because they don't talk about it, they're less likely to seek help and work on it. Anyway, I've gone a bit of a sideways tangent there. But yeah, I think just being more vocal about how you feel and like showing a bit more emotional vulnerability, basically, I think would just be helpful for everyone, men and women. And then what does non-toxic masculinity look like?
Lots of scared men saying how scared they are.
Yeah, talking about how you feel. I actually did a podcast recently with Aldo Kane and Matt Pycroft on masculinity. So if you are interested in that, I would take a listen to that because I think that's probably too big a question at this point. But I think it's a very interesting question and it's very in vogue, I would say, right now. But yeah, so if you go to the Strong Mind podcast, it's one of the more recent ones we've done.
Can we get a big round of applause?